12-11 in the race for the White House. Hillary Clinton still holds the lead in a majority of the polls, but in some cases, the Democratic nominee's lead is narrowing. Let's pick apart the polls this week with a polling expert, John Johnson of Edgeworth Economics and the author of the book Everydata.
Well, not a lot of change this week. You'll probably see some stories about some slight declines in Clinton's lead overall, sort of the two-way races, the average about up 6. Starting to see a lot more four-way polls, including Gary Johnson and Jill Stein still there, Clinton holding a lead about 5.5 points. Most of the action this week is really just as these averages get made, some of the very exuberant polls right after the conventions are sort of dropping out of the averages. I think the interesting things that I'm starting to see is some of the states that look like they're starting to be in play. Georgia and Nevada tied this week. Florida is still fairly close. You'll also see some stories from some of the major media outlets starting to talk about moving their quote-unquote declaring Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Virginia now leaning Democratic. But that's all based on polling from a week or two ago. So just remember the times of these polls are as well. There hasn't been a lot of action other than the Georgia and Nevada polls this week that show ties.
One thing you do is really look at the polls closely to test the veracity of them. And what did you see when you put them under the magnifying glass?
Well, I think one of the things that I do kind of try to always look at is when you're looking for trends, you want to try to be comparing the same polls because certain polls have inherent biases in the way they ask questions in their samples. For example, there is an LA Times poll that consistently skews more Republican. It was interesting when that poll started to show a lead for Hillary Clinton, even though it's only by a few points. You'll hear some analysts sort of cherry pick certain polls, and this happens in both Republican and Democratic analysts, where they'll pick the polls they like the best. The one poll that has Hillary Clinton up by 14, or the one poll that has Donald Trump within 1. But I think the really important thing is to understand different polls do have biases. You have to look at the same poll to make comparisons on trends, and just be careful about that. Again, overall right now, the totality of the polls suggest that Hillary Clinton is up, about 5 to 6 points.
And the question always seems to be, what are the questions that are going out on those surveys, which are determining the outcome of these polls?
Oh, absolutely, because you can always, when you ask both how you ask the question, do you precede a question with a series of sort of negative statements? We always hear these trustworthy questions. Do you believe someone's trustworthy? Do you think that Donald Trump's latest encounter with the media, does that matter? Does Hillary Clinton's emails matter? So you can condition people to answer questions a certain way to elucidate or to draw out of them more negative responses. That's kind of something to watch for. But then also just remember, who you sample matters a lot. Samples can skew one way or the other, and as a result, you'll get different results.
John Johnson with Edgeworth Economics.